Welcome to the Introverted Influencer Podcast. I'm your host, Erica Van Slyke. My soul's mission on this planet is to help fellow introverts grow their online influence in a state of feminine flow and ease. While battling the woes of depression, anxiety, and even mom guilt, I've somehow managed to build a six-figure blog without the use of social media and without sacrificing my mental health. If I can do it, you can fucking too. Hello, you queen. Welcome back to episode 44 of the Introverted Influencer Podcast. I just got to tell you, I just finished interviewing the guest that you're about to hear. She's incredible, and now I am freaking fired up for the new year. I am talking about Miss Whitney Wiser Savage. So I met her back at the Abundance Formula event, which we both spoke at back in November. And just as soon as I met her, I loved her vibe. She was so calming. She is a seasoned motivational speaker. So she really set me at ease. And not only that, she's just got this like no BS, totally real, strong energy about her. She is a fighter. She's been through some major shit, and I would consider her a queen of comebacks. Not only that, she's a fellow introvert, you guys, and had a horrible, horrible fear of speaking. And that's what she does now for a living. So it's all her, just the whole thing is inspiring. She's also an IFBB Pro Athlete, an Olympian. She's a TEDx speaker. She is a fitness entrepreneur and the founder of Fit Life Productions. And she hosts some pretty transformational women's events and retreats. And she's a mindset coach as well. So she's got a lot going on for her. And I can't wait for you to be just as fired up as I was talking to her. Without further ado, here's Miss Whitney Wiser Savage. Hello, Whitney. It is so nice to see you again.
So good to be here. I feel like I haven't talked to you in forever.
Yeah, I know. And I feel like we were on a roll. Like there were so many things that I got from your talk at the Abundance Formula event. And your message was what I really needed to hear at the time. So I'm so glad we can finally do this now. And yeah, so since you are on the Introverted Influencer Podcast, I don't think I got to ask you. I've got to ask you now. Do you consider yourself an introvert?
100% yes. There's no doubt.
Okay. I wouldn't have guessed that because you were so natural being around all those people and you host all these events. So that's really inspiring to hear. And I'm sure all of my listeners will be inspired. So go ahead and tell everyone about your spiritual self-development journey of stepping into your purpose, and share the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah. Where do I even start with that? It's just, I feel like it's taken so many twists and turns along the way. It's so hard to like go back and tell the whole story. But I know from my talk, what we had talked about after that is the fact that my calling and my purpose is something that I wasn't passionate about, I wasn't naturally good at, I didn't want to do, and I didn't feel comfortable doing. And so that's the hardest thing because, when you hear people talk about finding your purpose, it's usually has something to do with something you're naturally gifted at or passion for or something, or a gift to do it. And I had none of those things, which is speaking, basically public speaking. And it's taken me years to, you say I look comfortable, but that's because it's taken years of panic attacks and
Which I
everything.
couldn't believe. I mean, just watching you calmed me down when I met you because I was a nervous wreck. That was the first speaking event. And you were so calm. So I was kind of feeding off your calm energy. And then, like you say, you've had like multiple panic attacks, which I want to get into how you worked through that because I think that'll be helpful for people. But I want to hear your story about when you said you started off like in marketing, because I did too. And like didn't really feel like I had a passion or a purpose at that point in my life.
So it's really weird because I've always liked marketing. I was always drawn to it ever since I took my first little marketing class in high school. And so that's what made me decide that's what I wanted to major in when I went to college. And so my what is it? I can't even think back. What do you have when it's your primary and your secondary? Like my primary.
Your major.
Yeah, major. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That's how long it's been since I've been in college.
Yeah.
My major was marketing and my minor was business management. And so I got, educated in marketing, but throughout college is when I really got into fitness even more. Like I've always loved fitness. I've always played sports, but all throughout college, I got into it even more. And then I started bodybuilding when I graduated from college and really got into the fitness world. And so I actually regretted getting my degree in marketing because I'm like, why did I get this degree? Why didn't I major in, health or, whatever, something to do with what I love?
It's same here.
Oh my God.
I had that regret too, because when I started doing the interior design, it's like, damn it, I should have done that. And it made you feel like all that time was wasted.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so I'm like, why in the world did I do this like marketing degree when I want to be in fitness? I don't want to run businesses. I want to be in fitness. And so, as I went on, this is skipping way far ahead, but I read this book called Soul Print by Mark Batterson. And for the first time in my life, it really helped me connect all the dots from everything that I've been through in my life, things I've gone through, things I've learned. It connected the dots in my brain on how it was all actually working together and how that marketing degree, I actually really needed that for what I'm doing now in like promoting events, putting events together and all the things that I do. Whereas my fitness knowledge, I learned all that from life experience. So I'm educated in fitness just from life experience, but I'm educated in marketing, like formal education. And so it started connecting the dots in my brain. I'm like, oh my gosh, God is good. He already had all this worked out. And I think I'm going to work it out. And so I was like, wow, like it just really all started coming together. This was like 5 or 6 years ago. And it really helped me. So I'm like, it wasn't a waste of time. I actually really needed all that marketing and business education.
I feel the same way. And so whenever you're pivoting, it's never all wasted. It's like little breadcrumbs and it'll make sense in the end, but at the time it doesn't always seem to you can't make sense of it. But I want everybody to hear the story of basically your rock bottom and how you overcame.
Well, I've had a lot of rock bottoms. Which one do you want to get?
Your major.
Okay. When I talked about that. So, kind of going back, like I mentioned, I started competing in bodybuilding as soon as I graduated from college, which is a whole different environment. Bodybuilding is just such a weird sport. So I was getting into it and it fueled my competitive side of me because I couldn't play sports anymore. I was out of college. And so I needed that like competitive thing. And so I started competing in bodybuilding, didn't know anything about it. It was just so I couldn't even follow a diet my first prep. And so it was hard. But as soon as
hardest thing I ever did.
Right. Like before that, I think the longest diet I had ever followed might have been 7 days.
Wow.
Maybe. But you have to diet for weeks. You have to stay on a strict plan. You have to work out. You're very routine when you're getting ready for a bodybuilding competition, and a prep could last anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. So it was a very different lifestyle than what I was used to, because I was a bartender in college.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
night and day.
yeah, completely different. But bodybuilding really helped me put a lot of structure in my life that translated over to other areas of my life, and just it really helped organize me. But anyway, so I got on stage for the first time and I got second place, which is great for your first time, but I'm an athlete, I'm competitive. Second place is not good in my book. So I knew at that point I got really mad, and I wasn't mad at the judges. I wasn't mad at the other competitors. I was actually mad at myself because I knew I had cut corners. I had like eat some things I wasn't supposed to. Maybe I skipped a workout or two here or there. And I was mad that if I knew if I would have given it my all, I could have won. And so that actually like lit a fire in me that kept going. And I started my prep for the show the very next year, right then and there, and like just kept going for it. It was such a challenge for me. It just kept me going, kept me coming back for more. So I competed for a couple years, finally started having a little bit of success, went to the national level stages, started winning shows at the national level, just out of nowhere. I was this person from nowhere. Like,
guys, that is incredibly hard to do. I dabbled in bodybuilding. A national level show is a really, really competitive sort of thing. So I just wanted to add that.
Yes, thank you. Because that's where they're going to crown like the next pro. Like you're trying to get pro status in bodybuilding when you go compete at the national level. So the competition, like everybody looks good. It's stacked. You've got hundreds of people there. So I started winning national level shows, but missing my pro card, my pro status by like a point or one placing like every time. But it really gave me a lot of confidence, because I'm like, man, I actually can be really good at this. Like I was that close to like turning pro every time. I'm like, man, I think I found my thing. And so at the same time, I'm having all this success, but in my personal life, I'm in an abusive relationship and just kind of lost in that, realm of things. And so finally, I built up enough confidence and courage to end the relationship that I was in. But it was already to a point where it was so bad, leaving was really hard. So when I made the decision to end it, break it off, my ex was very emotional about it. He wanted to talk more about it. And so finally I gave in, and I was like, you know what, you can meet me at my job on my lunch break. I'll come talk to you for a few minutes, whatever. So
was this your marketing job that you had?
I was in corporate sales.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. Yes, I used to be a corporate sales rep. So
okay.
I worked a regular 8 to 5. So on my lunch break, I told him he could come up there. So he came up there. I got in his truck. We talked for maybe 5 minutes. Very unproductive conversation. And I basically just ended it. And I was like, this is so unhealthy for both of us. We just need to go our separate ways. And so I got out of the truck, shut the door, started walking. It's a huge parking lot. So I started walking back across the parking lot to go into the building. He pulled out of the parking space and then just floored it toward me, and never slowed down, never took his foot off the gas, and completely just ran me over. Now, this is a SUV running me over. I'm a little bit smaller than an SUV, so it didn't turn out great. I got caught underneath the vehicle. The vehicle dragged me across the parking lot. I think they said 30 feet or so before whatever was holding me under there let me go. And it let me go in such a way that the back tire rolled over my midsection and crushed my spine. So I never lost consciousness.
Oh my God.
Now, I didn't know exactly what had happened because it was just so fast. So much was happening. I just knew I was in a lot of pain, and that's all I knew basically. However, there was 2 eyewitnesses. One, he saw the whole thing, called 911 immediately. The other eyewitness just happened to be a former EMT. Thank you, God, for putting him in, right?
Chills.
Yeah. Former EMT who knew like I was going to try to get up. Because I could I could move my legs and I could move, but I didn't really know how bad I'd been hurt or what happened. So my first reaction is try to get up and like, move. And he would not let me get up. He held my neck and just up here down, because he knew that if there was any spinal injury, I would be paralyzed. Oh, it's so hard to talk about because
I'm about to get emotional too.
Oh my gosh. But he was there. He wouldn't let me move. And it's probably because of him that I'm not paralyzed today. So they made me, just stay still while they were on the phone. The cops and everybody got there pretty quickly. And like I said, I never lost consciousness. So I was able to clearly talk to the detective and, tell him this vehicle name went this direction, and they were able to get him into custody, within not much time at all, and took him to jail. But yeah, what happened, just so we get a full picture, I was transported to Vanderbilt Medical Center, and I had emergency back surgery since my spine was crushed. They had to go in and put metal rods and screws into my spine around the crushed vertebrae just to stabilize it. Other injuries, I think all my ribs were broken. So it was really just hard to breathe because my ribs were sticking into my lungs. And then I had a huge cut on my face that had to get stitched up. And then I had road burn all over my body, but there was no internal organ damage or anything else like super serious, other than the crushed spine, of course, which is another miracle in itself. So I was in the trauma unit, and the doctors were basically telling me, you're going to have to learn how to walk again. You're probably not going to get back to the stage. So just go ahead and mentally prepare yourself for that. And me being the angry, stubborn person I'm like, you can't tell me like what I'm going to do. So I would listen to what they were saying, but in my mind, I was like, don't tell me what I'm going to do and what not do. And also on the other side of that, I couldn't really comprehend like how badly I was hurt. I didn't understand, like, learn to walk again. I can walk fine, because in my mind, I can walk just fine. I didn't know, like, my legs just didn't work the same and all of that. And so when I was released within a week from the hospital, because I was young, I was recovering. They knew I would get better. And basically they're like, you're just going to have to take time to heal, learn to walk again. But, there's nothing we can do for you here. So you might as well just go home. And I was like, okay. So we get in the car to go home. And I thought my parents were just going to take me back to my apartment here in Nashville and drop me off. And then we start going back to their house, which they live about an hour away in Tullahoma. And I'm like, where are we going? And my dad is like, you can't walk. You have to come home with us. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, just take me to my apartment. He's like, babe, you cannot walk. And so it just like was not registering. And I'm just like, okay. Yeah. And then I started going downhill. Once I got to their house, I wouldn't eat. I don't know why, for whatever reason. I was in so much pain. I just didn't want to eat. I didn't want to do anything. And I could barely even move already. So it took a lot of time to recover. And my parents still worked. So I would just be sitting watching TV, like in my dad's recliner for most of the day. And then when he came home on his lunch break, he would be like, have you walked? Have you got up? Have you walked? Have you ate? And if I said no, he would just force me to get up and walk, even if it was just 10 steps. And so little by little, like, he would always push me to do something. And then eventually I would just start walking, from 10 steps, just walking down their hallway in their house. I eventually got outside and would walk down the driveway back and forth, to ended up walking around the block. And I would just end up walking constantly after like 3 or 4 weeks, because there's nothing else I could do besides walk. So
you were able to walk after like 3 to 4 weeks. Wow.
Well, I could walk with help after a week, but I couldn't by myself. I would have to, just because I don't know why, I just couldn't stand up. Like, I couldn't get up by myself out of a chair. So as long as somebody could help me get up out of a chair or out of bed or whatever, then I could take a few steps by myself. So it took probably 3 or 4 weeks until I could actually get up by myself and walk. So I just had to build little by little. from that point on. But I lived with them for 6 weeks, and then I was able to come back to my apartment since I could actually get up and take care of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine you finally found your thing. Life is looking up. You're in a groove when you'd felt lost, like you didn't have anything. And then all of a sudden it's taken away from you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get like really depressed, or were you just more angry?
Anger is always my default emotion.
That's probably good because depression is mine.
People say a lot of bad things about anger, but if you just take the anger and use it and put it in the right direction, it is a powerful fuel. You can't run on it for forever. I understand that, but you can use it while you have it. You just have to channel it into the right direction, instead of, using it and it's destructive. Just use it for good and productivity, but you just have to put it in the right direction. And so I was angry, but I look back and I'm like, how in the world did I know like how to rebuild my mind and do all this stuff at 24 years old? Because I wasn't into self-help or any of that.
That was going to be my next
Nothing.
question were you naturally like that? Were you already into that?
Not at all.
Wow.
Not at all. Not until like maybe 5 years ago, which this happened 11 years ago.
Okay.
So I look back and I did all these things like naturally, like I read Power Thoughts by Joyce Meyer and all these things to rebuild my mind back. While I was walking every day, walking the block around my parents' neighborhood, I would visualize myself on stage, like just walking on stage, and I could see it so clearly. Like all the competitors were around me. I could see the judges. I could see me winning. I accepted
So
my
you
award.
already knew like what manifestation was before that was even a trending thing.
I didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing it. I had
That's
no
really
idea.
cool.
I didn't know it was called visualization. I didn't know I was
Yeah.
manifesting. I didn't know. I had no idea about any of that stuff. I was just naturally doing it. And now, years later, I realize how smart it was and how I was doing it. But back then, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to make it through and
Yeah.
figure out ways to make it through, because I hadn't read books on this. I hadn't, nothing, no podcast,
Wow.
nothing. And
Yeah.
so naturally, I was just trying to find ways that helped me get through it. And so I had, days where I was depressed, but I knew I couldn't stay there because I would just go too down, like too deep. And so before I would even let myself get down, I would just find ways to pick myself back up before I got too deep. And something I had to do is like almost I think of it as like building a fortress around my mind. As people, even well-meaning people, family and friends, like they think they're doing you good and doing you a favor by, just being realistic and saying, you probably won't get back to the stage. So go ahead and mentally prepare yourself for that. They just don't want you to get your hopes up. But that's not helpful. It's negativity. And so anybody that said anything like that around me, I would stop them mid-sentence and just let them know, hey, if you're going to talk like that, then just please don't come around me. Like I was pretty mean. Like I said, because I didn't care. I knew like if I let any doubt or negativity, any seeds even get planted in my mind, I couldn't handle it. So I was very protective of my mind around that time. And I didn't care whose feelings I hurt because I had to do what I had to do to survive. And so that's kind of just what I did.
Yeah, I love that because it's taken me so much work to get there because my default is get depressed, fall in a hole, and barely get through life. So I feel like though, like you said, you knew you couldn't let yourself sink because you would sink too far. I think that was kind of the gift of me having depression at a young age, was to know now I can't let myself, because I've seen how far it can go.
Yeah, you can't let it spiral or
No,
it's harder
no.
and harder.
Okay, so in your TEDx talk, How to Overcome, there's a kind of like a little zinger in the story where I feel like, oh, this is her comeback. You said, you've done the therapy, you're back at the gym, you're healing yourself, and you make it back to a national stage. And I'm like, this is her
Yeah.
comeback. And then you're like, and I didn't even place. All my biggest fears were materializing.
Yeah. Oof.
Yeah. I feel like the energy, right? I feel like that this particular part of your story is really relevant to what's going on now. Like collectively, I pick up on energy, and I feel like so many people right now are trying, and they're trying the good fight. And so much it seems to be coming at everybody right now. So I think a lot of people would want to know, okay, you're doing what you know you're supposed to be doing, and then life keeps throwing shit at you. How do you work through that? That's like another level to work through.
Right. Oh man, I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually left that part out of my story for the longest time, because, you know, I had my low, and then 3 years after that, I still did turn pro. So I kind of just skipped right to that part.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just about to do that with you too, but I'm glad you brought that.
Because that is something I needed to hear. And I think so many people need to hear that right now.
I'm glad you brought it up, because I was about to skip past it. I turned pro 3 years later. No, so yes, a year later, so I was at the show that I had just won. I didn't get my pro card. I was like one place away, but I had just won. And then that happened to me. I actually go back to that very same show a year later, and I pushed myself to get on stage probably a little bit too hard and too soon. But I did get back on stage. I just wasn't at that competitive level again yet, because it just hadn't been enough time for me to build my body back. So I go from winning first place in my class to not even placing at all, like at all. They only place top 15. So if you're not top 15, basically you didn't place.
Yeah.
It was me. So I just kind of, chalked it up. Didn't think about it, because I knew there was another show coming 4 more weeks. And so I just forgot about that one. I'm like, I just got to focus on this next one coming up. It'll be fine. Again, I just won this show too. First place, just didn't get my pro card. So I was like another.
Yeah, before the accident, right? Is what you're saying. Okay.
Before the accident. Yes.
Okay.
So I had the same 2 back-to-back shows that are 4 weeks apart. So I went to this one, didn't place at all again. And so after that, I knew like I just needed to take time and rebuild. I don't think I ever really sat to process all that at that time, because again, like my brain couldn't, like I could not let myself get too low, and I think I was still there. So what I did was focused on, okay, what do I do and what can I look forward to? And so I picked out a show, which, since I didn't even place in these 2 national level shows this year, that means I was going to lose my national qualification and I would have to get requalified the next year. And I knew I was going to have to do that. So I picked out a local show that I knew was going to be like the next March, which this was in June. So it was not going to be until March. I was like, I think that'll give me time to just slowly, build my body back. And then I can go hopefully requalify here, and then maybe get back to the national level stage after that. And so I kind of just set my focus on that, so that I wasn't looking back and like, oh my gosh, I lost. Like I just won these shows and now I can't even place. Am I ever going to get back there? Like I didn't let my mind go into that downward spiral. I really just couldn't, because I knew I would just go too low. And so I focused on that. I prepped for that. I went into this show. I won. I ended up winning the show. So I got my national qualification back, but I also won the overall title, which I had never done before at a show.
Now that's a big deal. That's
Mhm.
hard to win an overall title.
Yeah. And so that gave me some confidence back too. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just won this whole show. Wow. Okay. I'm getting back. I'm getting there. And so I just ended up doing shows. I did 6 shows that year after that, because I wanted to get that pro card. But I got back to the national level stage, and I still got top 5. So I was placing well, but I wasn't getting first or second. Actually it was like second or third or fifth, like always. And so I was back in the top 5, but I still wasn't getting my goal of turning pro. So it was 5 shows that year that I got top 5, but I was still that far away.
Mm-hmm.
I quit so many times, because
Quit with air quotes.
I'm done with this sport. I'm done with this, when really I just needed a day. And then I was back on it. And then I had judges like that. This one judge told me, he's like, you just don't have a pro physique. You know, he would point out my weak areas that needed to get built up or whatever. He's like, you're just never going to have that. And of course, that was the best gift somebody could have given me, because I get angry. And what happens when I get angry? It start to happen. So then I was on a mission to prove him wrong, basically.
Yeah.
And I showed up the next year, which now we're in 2014. That happened in 2011. Got back on stage 2012, competed in all those back-to-back shows 2013. So now we're in 2014. I show up at my first national level show where it all started, and I finally win. I get my pro card, and I'm basically look at that judge and be like, what now?
Gosh, you are just a natural fighter. And I love that. And that's one thing. So before I started my home and interior design blog,
Yeah.
I had actually started a little fitness blog for a little bit, but I knew right off the bat, my first show, I'm like, first of all, this is the hardest shit I've ever done in my life. And number two, I am not that competitive enough. I'm just not. I just I'm more of a creative, I guess. I don't have that natural fighter in me. So that's beautiful. I admire that so much. What would you say to someone who, I'm going to say someone kind of like me, someone who is kind of woo-woo and go with the flow and spiritual and can see, okay, if all this adversity is hitting me, then maybe this is a sign from the universe that this is not meant for me?
Oh man, that's a good question. There is always going to be adversity and obstacles in your way. Even if you are on the right path and you are operating in your purpose, there will still be obstacles, but you have to prove that you want it. So you have to keep going. You have to keep showing up. And honestly, I could turn that question back around on you, because you are like that. And how did you started this podcast, the Introverted Influencer, which I love the title, by the way.
Thank you.
What made you do this? Because you're like me. You didn't naturally want to speak or do this.
Okay. So that's what I want to circle back around to now.
Okay.
Because that's what really touched me in your speech. It was exactly what I needed to hear, because with the blog, okay, I started off in marketing, wasn't passionate about it, thought, oh God, it's a waste of time that I'm going to switch over to interior design. But it all came together, because if I hadn't had my marketing skills, I wouldn't have known how to start a website. I don't promote myself that well, but I do. I found what works for me with search engine optimization and Pinterest. Not a big social media person. And so I never could have made a living from my passion if it weren't for the marketing thing. And it all blended very seamlessly. And it was a pretty flowy journey. It was just me deciding I was going to do it and not listen to people telling me you can't make money from your passion. But it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt like something I wanted to do. And I kept getting these nudges from the universe, or winks from the universe. Yes. Like what I'm trying to say is there wasn't a lot of adversity.
Okay. Well, there was. You're just minimizing.
Somehow, maybe. I'm saying now that I'm listening to that calling in my heart, that I really want to help women above just the superficial interior design, DIY stuff. I want to help with, matters of mental health, spirituality, all these things that I had to learn because it wasn't natural for me, like you, because I'm not a fighter. So I want to show women who aren't naturally just super resilient how to develop that. Okay, the only thing I know to do, I get this download. I've got to speak. I've got to start. I journaled it out after a meditation, the Introverted Influencer podcast. And I'm like, what the hell? God, this is really funny because I can't stand to speak. I've got mom brain. I blank out. I can't even think of like simple words, and I can't stand the sound of my voice. So I thought it was hilarious. Okay. I started, it'll be 1 year it was at the very end of January. So we're almost coming up on a year of this.
Oh,
I'm still not comfortable with it.
you seem like it though.
I'm not. I'm like, I dread it. I was nervous right before I got on with you. I'm like, why am I nervous? I know her. I like her. Like, why am I nervous about this? So
In a year. I think
this
we
this idea that your purpose is not always going to be something that you thought you would like to do. It's not always going to be something that feels natural. And maybe your passion won't necessarily be your purpose, but your passion leads to your purpose. That was something I never thought of before until your speech. So elaborate more on that. Like, give me some of what you were saying that day.
So, well, I'm going to pull from some of the things that you just said, because we're so much alike in so many different ways, but all that resonated with me. And so both of the thing we have in common with our purpose is we truly want to help women. That's our purpose. We just don't really like the way that we're having the medium.
Yes, the medium. Okay, yes.
That's what it is. And I never thought about that until I just listened to you explain that. But that's what it is. Like, our purpose is to help women, and we feel so deeply about it. We're going to do whatever it takes, even if we don't feel comfortable in it. And so, what is it? Our purpose became, so my purpose in competing, that was all about me, right? That was my purpose at the time. But now when my purpose became bigger than me and it came to helping other people, then that is when I'm willing to do kind of more of whatever it took. And so the way that I first saw this is I knew God was telling me that this is what I was going to, I felt it like right after I had competed at the Olympia, which the Olympia, for people that don't know, is like the Super Bowl of the bodybuilding world. If you make it,
it's a huge deal.
Yes. If you qualify to compete in that show, you are one of the best in the world. And so that was a goal I had never even set for myself, because I didn't think I would ever be good enough to get there. But I ended up competing in the Olympia. And then 2 weeks later, I get this random phone call from the mayor of the town that I'm from, which is Tullahoma. And
that's right outside Nashville, right?
It's about an hour from Nashville. Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually about halfway between Chattanooga and Nashville.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And so it was just the most random phone call ever. And he was like, "Hey, Whitney, I see you've been doing a lot of great things in the sport. Would love to know more about your story. Will you come speak to the high school and kind of share some of your story? And then also we're doing this walk for charity if you want to come be part of it, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Sure. Okay." And then as soon as I hung up, like, I knew, like, just in my soul, God was telling me, "I'm calling you to speak." And I immediately started crying, and I said, "No, God, no, not me, not me. I'm not good at speaking. I'm a writer. I can't do it."
Yes, that's what I always say. I'm a writer because I'm a blogger. Yeah.
I love writing. I've always been good at writing. I always loved to write, not speaking. And so I was basically like, that's how sure I was that I heard God, what he was going to call me to do. And that's why I started crying. And I said, no. I came up with all these excuses. I'm like, I can't do it. Like, I can't. And it was just been a slow process. That was at the end of 2016.
Okay.
So slowly but surely, like, I would always get these little opportunities to speak. And of course, I couldn't say no, because, like, sharing my story, that was going to be helping people and, all of that. And so then it was probably the beginning of 2017, I got the idea that I wanted to have my own bodybuilding competition, but it be only for women, which is weird.
I love that. No, I think that's great because it's such a bro scene, and it can be uncomfortable and intimidating for women to step into that kind of arena. Yeah.
See, and like most women would see that, but in this male dominated sport and industry, they all thought it was the weirdest idea ever and didn't know why the heck I would do something like that, because the money that you bring in is mostly from entry fees. And so, like, you're cutting out half of your possible entry fees if you don't let men compete. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I want to do this for women, because I was judging, I was a judge, or I've been a judge for a while. And so I was sitting at the judging table at one show here, local show that doesn't exist anymore. And I'm looking at the stage, and there's one dinky banner on the stage and nothing else. I think the competitors, their competitor bag, they might have got like 2 samples, little samples of protein, and that was it. And I'm like, this is absolutely a disgrace. Like, these athletes work
Yeah, what
so
you have to
hard.
put yourself through. And it's expensive sport in the
Yeah,
first place. I mean, makeup, suits are
it made
expensive,
me mad.
shoes,
Again,
training, everything. Yeah.
anger once again. I got angry at this because I was like, these athletes work so hard. They deserve to stand on a stage that is like actually time and energy is put into to make it look great. They should get better competitor bags. Like, this should just be different. And then also, they always put the bikini division, which is my division, last.
At the
And so
very end. Yeah.
yes. And so I didn't like that either. I was like, man, I could promote a better show than this. And I can make it all for women. So the spotlight is just on them. And then just from that little idea, from me getting angry at this show for not doing enough, like, this sparked an idea in me that just kind of kept developing. And then I was like, okay, how do I get approved to get a sanction in the state, whatever. And I already knew there was a line of people waiting for it, because you can only have so many shows in each state. It depends how many athletes the state has. So you're limited to number of shows. And so there's already a line of people who want that sanction. They want to get approved so they can start their own show. And so I'm like, okay, well, it's not likely that I'm going to get approved right away, but at least I can start the process and see where it goes. But because my idea was so different and outside of the box, they're like, we should probably just give her a sanction because it's so different. Like, everybody else is just wanting to start another bodybuilding show. They haven't come up with anything unique, different. So why give them the sanction? So I feel like God gave me that favor, and I got this approved sanction when there's a line of people basically waiting in the state. So I got approval for it. I went through the whole process. I don't know how to promote a show. I don't know how to plan any events. Like, I'd never done anything like that before. But I knew that I had to let people know about it. And the best way to let people know about it is to speak to large groups of people at these other shows that I'm already at judging. I need to talk about what I'm starting. And so it forced me, even though I was not comfortable. Oh my gosh, I can just remember how anxious I was every time I got up to talk about this show. And I barely didn't even know what to say. If I had a friend with me, I'd be like, so what do I say? Like, how do I start? And they'd be like, you should probably say who you are and introduce yourself. Oh yeah, okay, I can do it. I would be sweating, girl, so much. But anyway.
It makes me nervous just listening.
Right?
Yeah.
So I had to constantly push myself outside of my comfort zone, because it wasn't just about me. It wasn't for me. It was for the business, the thing I was trying to start for women, and in the sport. And so I had to do it, no matter how uncomfortable I was. I just had to do it. And I'll still tell you, like, I still had anxiety years into it. And I think I told you at the event, I just stopped having anxiety maybe a year ago. I've been on this journey 17, 18, 19, 20, 6 years. Actually, this will be the 7th year. So it took about 5 years of anxiety to get through it.
Okay. So that, to me, wow, because I'm like, oh my God, it's been a year. Like, this should be feeling more natural. I'm so not used to that. What would you say to me or anybody in the position that it's like, you've been going at it for a year or two and it still doesn't necessarily feel like you're in a flow? How do you
keep going? Just keep going. Just keep showing up. Just keep showing up. Just keep going, no matter what. Even when you don't feel like it, keep showing up, because I feel like that's just the way that I got through it. Like, I would get more and more and more speaking opportunities each year. And I had to say yes to all of them, because I knew that's what God was calling me to do. And I knew if I didn't do what I was supposed to do, I wasn't going to have the life that I wanted to have eventually. And so that's what it took. I was horrible at speaking in the beginning. Like, I cringe even thinking about all my speeches in the very beginning. And the first time I told my story, which I didn't even tell my story for the longest time, because I thought it wasn't organized enough. I didn't know how to organize it. What was the point of it? Like, there was no point. Like, what am I telling people? Like, big deal. This is what happened. But what am I telling them? Like, what am I giving them to do from it? Nothing. So I wouldn't tell my story for the longest time because I thought it had to be, I don't know, here's your 3 steps to overcome getting run over. Like, I thought it had to be something like, no,
Yeah.
I have that. Like, I didn't know.
You were
So
trying to maybe like put such a practical application on it, not maybe recognizing that just your story alone was enough. Like,
and I thought that, like, too, like, what if people ask me questions? Like, what if I don't know the answers? I won't know how to answer them. And so that was a big fear of mine too. And then one day I went to this women's conference just randomly, just by myself. It's like, I'm going to go to this. And I got one line that changed my whole perspective. And the lady speaking said, you don't have to have all the answers to share your story. It's still going to help somebody. And when she said that, I was like, whoa. I was like, I don't have to have all the answers. I didn't know that. I seriously thought I did have to know all the answers to share my story. But when she said that, it changed my whole perspective. And I'm like, oh, maybe I can share it. And so then my mind started like developing, well, how would I say it? How would I, and like exploring that until I finally figured out, okay, how am I going to tell my story? And then still the first 4 or 5 times I told it, it was horrible. Like, I mean, I say that now. It's still like people that I say that I'm blessed because I have such a traumatic and dramatic story that it's going to resonate with, it's going to reach people and help people no matter how horribly I tell it, because it still is what it is.
yeah, it's pretty horrible.
And so now I look at it as a blessing because I'm like, well, at least people are still going to, have hope from that. Like, if I overcame that, they can overcome anything. No matter how horribly I tell it, they're still going to get that from the story. And so I feel like I was blessed in that way. I'm like, hey, this got me to a point where at least I can tell it and it makes sense now.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever get a speech coach? And
No.
he did a TEDx talk and you didn't even use a coach for that? Dang.
I had COVID too when I gave that speech.
Dang. So it was just repetition.
What I would do, since I'm a writer, I write every single word of my entire speech and try to memorize the entire thing.
Yes. Okay. That's what I did for Gina's event.
Hard.
I just memorized it. I had to get it in my body. I couldn't be in my head, if that makes sense, because I was a dancer. I'm not a big athlete, but I was a dancer. And so it's like, at first the choreography, it's all in your head and it's not fun because it's just in your head. But then once you get that muscle memory, it's just an extension of you. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, it's going to have to be in my body, not in my head. Yeah. Which meant I had to do, oh my God, I worked on that thing like for 2 months, like hours every week, just trying to memorize, because it was an hour long speech. So
that's a lot for your first time too.
Yeah.
But I'll do the same thing. I would like print it all out, have it taped all across my wall, and like just try to memorize like every single word. And you can do that when you only have, 1 or 2 speeches a year to give. But now I have one every week. I don't have time to prepare.
So like, where all are you giving speeches now? I mean, okay. Yeah. Tell us about like your events, what you're doing now, how you have stepped from a passion of being an athlete and bodybuilding to now, how are you living your purpose every day now?
Man, there's so much now. I was just thinking last night, I was like, I've actually created a life that I love and exactly how I wanted to over the past few years. And I just had to make myself stop and realize that, instead of, as women, we're always like, oh gosh, I'm not getting enough accomplished. I'm not doing this. I still have to do this and reach this goal. And I just had to stop myself. I'm like, I've actually successfully created a life that I love, and I get to do what I want. I get to speak to women all the time. I get to empower them, help them in all these different ways. But some of the ways that I do that is I host retreats, which I've got one coming up in Belize in 2 weeks.
I was about to ask you, when is that retreat? I wish I could come. I'm so jealous.
You'll have to come to the next one. This one is in 2 weeks in Belize. And it's called Building Influence in Belize. And so I'm big on talking about identity and knowing who you are first, because that everything else stems from that. If you don't know who you are and what you want, you're not going to accomplish anything. So I always start there. But this one, I want to really talk about like the power of influence that we all have, whether you speak or not, you have influence with just the people that you're around. So that's what I'm going to really dive into on this retreat. Every retreat has a different theme, but this one.
I like that a lot. You know, I was actually about to do a solo podcast about that. Because I got into this thing called Gene Keys. It's kind of like human design, you know, human design. Okay. And it's like, well, your purpose may not be as deep as you want it to be, but you are still going to be influential. And that got me thinking, like, even if, you know, I think about my mom, she's an esthetician. She's still highly influential, even though it doesn't sound that deep to be an esthetician. It's still highly influential and impactful.
Anybody, like if you're around people at all, which we all are in some way, then you have influence. And a lot of people don't realize that. And so they just automatically give up their power because they think they don't have any.
Have it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, I mean, you could say one word, just like I got that one line from that lady at the women's conference that changed my whole thought process and possibly the direction of my life. We all have that power. So we all need, if we're aware of that and intentional with it, then we can shift somebody's entire life with one positive, word of encouragement or something. But we all have that power. And so I think it's so important.
Yeah, and that makes me think about my husband. I don't know if he's going to love me talking about him, but he said before, like, I'm so envious of you, Erica, because you have this platform, you have a blog, you have a podcast. He has to manage people in more of a corporate setting. And he's like, man, I wish I had that purpose. And I'm like, you interact with people. They look to you every day for the answers. Like, no, what you do, it's a big deal. Like, we can't all just be influencers or life coaches.
Yeah.
But we all can be impactful.
Yeah. We're all influencers just in our own different
ways.
ways.
Okay. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, he's leading people every day.
Right.
And like the effect that he has on each person is going to make a ripple effect into their family, their friends, their circle of influence. And so who knows, he'll never know how far that ripple effect goes. Whereas like, we that have platforms, like we can kind of see our following and stuff like that, which whatever, but we'll just never know the impact of his influence, but it's still there.
I love that. I think that's encouraging, especially for maybe someone in the middle of a pivot right now, or someone who still hasn't even found like a passion, just to know that you do matter. Your actions, your words absolutely make a difference.
Yeah. And actually that just reminded me, I just started like online group coaching for women that maybe can't come on a retreat, can't afford it, or just can't get away for that long. I just started doing online group coaching programs to where it's like the first one, it's called Building Your Best Life. So I talk about identity. I talk about finding your purpose, how to create a life you love, talk about influence a little bit, but it's just kind of all incorporated into this 5-week program. And so I'm starting it again next month. So I'll have signups really soon, but that's another way.
And if you want, is that going to be on your, just your normal website? I'm thinking about show notes.
Okay. Yes. So it'll be on my website, also my Instagram, where everything's on my Instagram. So I'll give you of all the resources, but my Instagram is at Whitney Wiser Fit. And so that kind of leads people to all my other pages, depending on what they're interested in. If they're interested in competing, they can go to the Nashville Fit Show page. If they're interested in retreats, they can go to the Her Style Events page. If they're interested in the group coaching stuff, then it's Wiser Fit Life. I have a million.
Okay.
But it's all.
Yeah. I'll put that in the show notes for everyone too. So
Cool. So group coaching, I think I've seen like the biggest impact with this, because like the most rewarding thing to me is to watch like just the light bulbs go off. I can just see a light bulb over like some of these women's head, like just goes off, and they're like, wow, they have the same like realization that I did whenever I figured out I didn't have to have all the answers to speak. It's like the same thing. And then I'll see them get like the clarity and direction that they need in their lives. And they're like 100% at that point. They know what they need to do. They know like the next step they need to take. And there's just so much power in having clarity. You can just move a lot faster if you know where you're going, right?
Yes. No, I love clarity. It's one of my favorite feelings.
Yes. Yes. But yeah, so group coaching, retreats, workshops, the show, just
I love how you're diversified.
Majors.
Yeah. With the recession on us, that's beautiful. Because this is it was intended to be an entrepreneurial type podcast, but then I got really kind of more into the energetics of it. But I would say I love that about your model, just how diversified it is. And I've been hurting lately because I kind of had all my eggs in one basket with the blogging. So that's nice how you've got multiple income streams.
Yeah, it's come as of recent though, like, because I was in the same boat until probably 2020. And then live events got pushed.
Yeah.
I had to do a pivot at that point. But luckily, I'm part of a mastermind group that really helped give me the tools and resources and just the connection with other like-minded entrepreneurs that were all in the same boat as me. And so just being part of that group just has helped my mind grow so much to like what is actually possible. So that's been a huge blessing.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to ask you, I have not done a mastermind and I was kind of on the fence. I'm like, is it really that great? Is it that impactful?
Yes.
Okay.
Because like, I don't know about you, but most of my friends and people that I talk to on a regular basis don't live near me.
Right.
It's not like I can just go meet up with, like-minded entrepreneurs and, people trying to do what I'm doing, like on a regular basis in person. And so having these weekly calls, even though it's online, I'm still like talking to people. I'm still getting the information and connecting. It's been life-changing. I can't even imagine what I'd be doing and where I'd be right now if this hadn't been in my life for the past 2 years.
How would you recommend people go about finding like a mastermind?
That's a good question because I didn't actually seek this one out. My best friend started this mastermind group and almost had to force me to be a coach in it, like the health and fitness coach in it. And I'm like, I don't want to speak though. I still don't want to speak. This is like 2 years. But it's been the best thing ever. So I'm not sure how to go about that. Probably Google mastermind groups.
Well, yeah. I mean, I hear about it from some of the podcasts I listen to, but I feel like a lot of those are super like just for coaches. And I'm not a coach yet, even though I've thought about it for sure. I think what you told me about you don't have to have all the answers, that's kind of freeing. I think that's what sounds intimidating about trying to be some sort of coach.
Yeah. Yeah. You are a coach. You write blogs, you're on a podcast, you host a podcast. You're now a speaker since you've spoken at Gina's Coach. So you are a coach basically, whether you like it or not.
Oh, I like that.
But I would always tell my best friend, like, she's like, you need to just go ahead and put speaker in your Instagram bio because that's what you are. That's what you're going to be. And I'm like, no, I'm not accepting it. I'm not putting it there. And now it's there.
It's there.
That was like 5 years ago. And I'm like, no, I don't accept this calling. And
wow. I love that. Well, okay. We're going to wrap this up. I think this has been nice and juicy and helpful. Do you just have any final words of wisdom for someone who was in your position or in mine when we were kind of in the marketing thing, just doing that basic blueprint to life, what we're told, get our degree, go out 9 to 5. And there's like this emptiness inside and they're like, I know I should be doing more. Just
Yeah.
What final words of wisdom would you recommend?
Two things popped in my head just now. The first thing is nothing is ever wasted. Nothing ever. So even
I
though
agree.
we thought our marketing degree was a waste of time, like whatever, we just didn't get the answer until down the road. And I'm going to say that's true for every single thing in your life, whether, you do a class and you don't ever use anything you learned, or you think you won't use it, or whether you went through a really hard, bad situation and you think it's just wasted time. Nothing is ever wasted. You just have to be intentional about, being aware of that and finding out like what it's going to be used for. And that doesn't mean you have to like be on the search like every day constantly. It's not like that, but just knowing that nothing is wasted is already just going to shift your mindset. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, I forgot most of it now because I talked too much. Besides just keep showing up. And I remember it now. So we kind of already talked about this, but purpose is like a big buzzword today. And like you mentioned, though, it might not be like this huge, deep meaning like purpose. And so I think a lot of people get caught up in trying to find that big thing that they miss the little things along the way that is their purpose. And it's still like just as big of a deal. It just doesn't seem like it to us. So just don't always like try to find the big thing. Like just focus on the little things and it'll usually lead you to the big thing if there is a bigger thing. But sometimes our purpose is huge and we just look at it as small. Like giving an encouraging word to somebody at the right time in the right place is life changing. And we think it's just, we just said this great thing, like encourage somebody along the way, and then we go on about our day, but that might have changed that person's life. And who knows what that person will go on to do. So we all have a huge purpose. We just have a different perspective around it. So
That's beautiful. Okay. And where can everyone find you? Just Instagram is what you recommend?
Instagram is the best place because it'll lead you to everything else that I do, like my website and all my other pages. So at Whitney Wiser Fit on Instagram is the best place to go.
Okay, Whitney. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that's probably not easy to go through that every time, but it's very helpful to others. So thank you so much.
It's worth it. Thank you so much for having me on. Good to talk to you again.
Good to talk to you. Bye.
Thank you so much for stopping by this week. I make no money from this show. Actually, it costs me money to produce and host. So the best way you can show your support for this passion project of mine is by leaving the show a 5-star written review on Apple. Also, if you would like to contribute monetarily to the show, you can leave a tip in my digital tip jar, which I have the link in the show notes. You can always share it with a friend who you think could benefit from the message, or even better, you can take a screenshot of this episode, upload it to your Insta stories, and tag me in it at Designing Vibes. Sending you my love.